Next up in the program is Carbiotix, and here to present the company is CEO Kristofer Cook. Welcome, Kristofer.
Thank you so much. My name is Kristofer Cook, although somebody the other day called me the Fiber King, but I guess today I'll be quite content with Kristofer Cook. I'm CEO of Carbiotix, a company that's focusing on pioneering smart prebiotic ingredients. And at the heart of the whole prebiotic discussion is the microbiome. And what is the microbiome? Well, the microbiome is the different bacteria, viruses, and fungi that are living on us and within us as well. And only in our large intestine, we have in excess of 30 trillion bacteria. And these bacteria, also called the host probiotic bacteria, live off of indigestible carbohydrates. So not food for our bodies, but food for these particular bacteria. And what these bacteria produce are short-chain fatty acids. So as we consume these soluble fibers or prebiotics, we produce these SCFAs. And the benefits of consuming the prebiotics or the soluble fibers that you have blood sugar and cholesterol regulation, mineral absorption. There's also been a link between the production of the SCFAs and reducing the risk of developing different chronic and metabolic diseases. And probably most important now, at least, given the fact that we've gone through and are in the middle of a global pandemic, is the fact that 70% of the immune system resides in the gut tissue. So it's extremely important. We also know that as we get older, that the amount as well as the diversity of our host probiotic bacteria decreases, and especially with the onset of different diseases as well. Now, we could address these obviously by taking probiotics, which are in many foods today, both in supplement form and as well as active ingredients in foods. But we also know that, generally speaking, there's a deficiency of prebiotics. And this is being exacerbated by the fact that we're consuming far too much sugar, red meat, emulsifiers, and alcohol. And therefore, many dietitians suggest that we're missing about 3 to 5 grams, but others are suggesting that it could be as much as 10 to 20 grams of soluble fiber or prebiotics. So 90% of the adult population globally missing up to 80% of what they should be consuming in terms of prebiotics. Now, this creates a significant market opportunity. And if you look at the low end of the anticipated growth, it's about 10%, and in the high end, in terms of what experts suggest could happen going forward, it's about 25% per annum growth. And then that's a 3x to 10x growth in the next 10 years. So the industry will go from a €5 billion industry to a 15 to 50 or 45 to 50 billion euro industry. And even with macroeconomic headwinds, one can suggest that the food industry and healthcare industries will be somewhat insulated. So potentially this industry may not grow at a 10x, but certainly it'll grow at between a 3 and 10x during the next 10 years. So any company that can capture that growth obviously will be quite successful. And any company that can deliver a product that is efficacious, tolerable, that meaning you can eat large amounts of the product, where you target diverse applications from food all the way to pharma, and where you could demonstrate the efficacy of the product in real time and over time. Does it actually work for an individual? Can you personalize that product? Those companies are going to be the successful companies in this particular space. So how did Carbiotix address this opportunity in the marketplace? Well, quite recently, we introduced the concept of smart prebiotics. And smart prebiotics are essentially satisfying these 3 requirements I just mentioned. So highly effective prebiotics that we create this bifidogenic effect and produce these SCFAs, which have these benefits. But also you can consume large amounts of these prebiotics. So it's not just 3 or 5 grams, but we can get into this 10 to 20 grams per day to satisfy this deficiency. We're also wanting to meet individual needs, i.e. that we want to assess how much does an individual need? Can we satisfy this need? Can we validate the effect? And can we increase that effect over time? And then we want to create synergies between different product groups, all the way from food to pharma, as well as medical foods and nutraceuticals in between. And we think that this opportunity for smart prebiotics will roughly represent about 5% of the total market within 10 years. So this is the opportunity for the company going forward. Now, based upon this, the mission of the company is to increase the consumption of what we call smart prebiotics or smart prebiotic ingredients. And how do we do this? We want to manufacture the lowest cost, most effective prebiotics on the market. We want to sell them through as many different forms and channels as possible. So different types of products, as I mentioned before, from food all the way to pharma, co-treatments. And we want to provide this low-cost test to validate the efficacy of the products, to really give an answer for an individual. Are they working for him or her? Now, as many of you well know today, we launched LinkGut, which is our B2B white label API gut health test. And this test today is essentially between 50 and 75% less than other consumer tests on the market. So we're already at a cost advantage compared to others, globally speaking. It's also the most reliable test, not only from the courier services we're using, but also from the ability to provide results in a specific time frame to meet the needs of our business partners, as well as most flexible, that the whole concept can be customized to meet specific needs, both on the analytical protocol side, but also on the branding side as well. So this is a market we think is growing quite substantially, about 20% per year. And we think we have a very unique value proposition in this space, in the B2B to C space. On the modulator side, we obviously have CarbioAXOS, which is our first flagship product produced from maize or corn fiber. And it's extracted through a chemical as well as an enzymatic process. And we know that we can utilize corn, and it produces a very interesting molecule that is highly substituted, a very small molecule, very complex, and ferments over a long period of time. But we know that we can also utilize other types of grains to produce an Axis product as well, especially given geopolitical headwinds. There's certainly an impetus to explore local grains for the production of Axis. And in this case, we're looking at a product which is up to 10 times more effective in terms of producing these SCFAs and getting these positive health effects, unique functional properties such as emulsification properties, and obviously our goal is to reach a very attractive price point, or at least meet at market products. In terms of medical foods, our goal is to produce a pure form of this Axis. Obviously, we're initially targeting a nutraceutical application, and we'll clean that product up even more, and that product will be used as a medical food. And as a medical food, we want to target dosings of around 10 to 20, even 30 grams per day. And this is a substantially large market as well, but it's also going to be an opportunity for the company to really drive volume sales. In terms of therapeutics, what we're looking at are unique symbiotic formulations, so probiotics and prebiotics together, where we're targeting the same disease areas as our medical foods. And now we're involved, for example, in one study looking at the application of CarbioAXOS medical food with metformin as a way to optimize the use of metformin and address the side effects as well as that intervention. And in the case of both of our medical foods and therapeutics, we're targeting what we consider co-treatments or co-interventions. Again, they're to be used with synthetic pharmaceutical products. So where are we producing our products today? Well, we took over the old R&D facility of Findus, which is a food manufacturer in Bjuv, Sweden. And this particular site is going to be our primary R&D facility, but also our main site for the production of nutraceuticals, medical foods, as well as therapeutics, and essentially a template site for expansion in North America as well as continental Europe. And as I said earlier, given certain geopolitical headwinds that we're seeing today, there's an even greater incentive to explore other locally produced raw materials, cereal grains, the brands of these cereal grains, to produce unique products, Axis products, and of course deliver these products globally. Where do we stand today? We have a number of key milestones for 2022. So 2022 will be a very exciting year for the company. We're in the process of completing our up to 10-ton Axis production site. And there what we've done is we've made a conscious effort to, when building this site, to really plan for the next expansion phases. When I say phases, I mean expansion within this particular footprint. So several multi-ton production lines. And by doing that, it's taken a bit longer, but it's also going to allow us to accelerate that expansion process, not only in terms of the technical side, but also financing models, et cetera. Also, GRAS submission and approval is a key milestone for this year. And there we've done the same thing as well. You know, we've taken the learnings of our earlier production at Bollesgård, and now we're going to transpose these to our production site at Food Hills. And obviously we'll take these learnings, integrate them into the dossiers, and then make sure that these are representative of the product we're going to be launching at market. This is critical. If we don't do this, we're wasting our time fundamentally. And that's why we're taking a very pragmatic process through that approvals process. And again, we're targeting self-affirmation. So we're not submitting a dossier to the FDA. This is submitted to an expert panel for approval and then for launch in the marketplace, targeting initially a nutraceutical application in the US. Obviously, once these things are in place, and as a parallel activity, I might add, we can get in our first Axis sales agreement and launch the product, which is also a key milestone for this year. And things look quite favorable at this point of time. At the same time, as I said earlier, we want to hedge both macroeconomic risks, geopolitical risks, and thereby we want to look at different substrates, so carry out different studies of local materials, also getting into other product groups as well. As I mentioned, medical foods, and therefore we have this metformin study we want to look at. And then there are other partner opportunities, for example, on the diagnostic side with the partner, or partner project, I should add, that was communicated earlier. In terms of LinkGut partners, we're seeing very good interest. We have an extremely competitive offering today, and therefore we see that growth trajectory continuing with adding LinkGut partners every quarter going forward as well. And then last but certainly not least, we want to cover all different types of modulator classes, and obviously getting our therapeutic co-treatments and co-interventions to market are critical, and getting our first patents in connection with that are also very important for us moving forward, and therefore this is a key milestone for 2022. So 2022 in its entirety, extremely exciting year. It's the culmination of many, many years of preparation and work, and I think it's going to be really a starting point for significant expansion, both on the technical development side, but also on the market expansion side going forward. In terms of our roadmap for our smart prebiotics, this has fundamentally not changed. 2022 is the year of our nutraceutical launch in the US as a CarbioAXOS ingredient, and this will be followed by the EU in 2023, and then hopefully the rest of the world thereafter. To get into the F&B space, this is about forming new legal entities through joint ventures to offset large capex and be able to produce CarbioAXOS both in continental Europe and North America. And as a parallel activity, as I mentioned, obviously we're pushing forward with the medical food studies, and eventually we'll reach a launch in 2025 in the US, and then eventually with our therapeutic co-treatments as well, which are these unique symbiotic blends, probiotics, prebiotics, initially targeting the same disease areas as our medical foods. So for example, type 2 diabetes will be the first application on the therapeutic side. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I welcome questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Kristofer.
Thank you.
So you mentioned the link between gut health and the immune system. How do your products affect a person's immune system?
Yes.
Is that a fair question?
It's definitely a fair question. We know that 70% of the immune system resides in, you could argue, the small and large intestine, in this gut-associated lymphoid tissue. And I think it's important to note that with the introduction of prebiotics, which are essentially food for your probiotic bacteria, you're producing these SCFAs, and through that process you're sort of reinforcing the mucosal layer, and therefore reducing, on one side, gut leakage, but also reinforcing this immune system tissue is probably the easiest way to explain that. So yeah, it's from my side, especially during COVID, I think I've been consuming between 20 and 40 grams of high quality soluble fiber per day. And you can't draw conclusions off of one person, but I haven't gotten COVID.
All right, lucky you. So going into something a little bit more specific, how are you able to provide a low-cost gut health test to consumers without cutting corners on quality?
That's a good question. I think it's because of the approach we've taken to the marketplace. We came from the prebiotic side in terms of what we knew what we wanted to achieve in terms of the production of these SCFAs. Therefore, we knew as well that modulating the gut takes a long period of time, i.e. that we want to monitor someone over a long period of time. And to be able to do that, obviously you need a low-cost test. So that was sort of the starting point and impetus behind efforts to optimize the test, which is one of the ways we brought down the cost, but also focusing on initially the PCR approach as opposed to the NGS, next generation sequencing. So this polymerase chain reaction focus targeting specific biomarkers allows us to really bring down the price, and then the fact that we know that we need multiple tests and we need to optimize it. Over and above that is the fact that this is not our core business. You know, we've created the test as a competitive advantage. So when we sell our ingredients to a food producer or a nutraceutical company, we say, now you can offer to your customers a way to validate the efficacy. So we're not saying the days of carrying out studies are not relevant, or carrying out studies are not relevant, i.e. that studies don't have a purpose. Of course they have a purpose, but we think the future is transparency and personalization, which requires an individual to validate whether a product has a positive effect or not. So because it's this core competitive advantage and it's not our core business, we can really hit the low end of what typical companies take as a margin, which is about 25 to 50%. And we know that over time, as our modulators enter the market, so our nutraceutical ingredients, our food and beverage ingredients, medical foods and therapeutic co-interventions and co-treatments, we can really bring down the price because it's not our core business, and the margins of those product classes are much higher as well. So what it means is that eventually we can get down to theoretically a sort of a gross margin zero offering, and then eventually subsidize, which will totally outcompete the market in terms of being able to offer a similar competitive offering, and where we really embed the validation, the companion diagnostic as part of our value proposition. So in any way, we're building a moat around our modulators through offering a low-cost test, and yeah, that's the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, great. And really quickly, last question. Could you talked about the installation of the first CarbioAXOS production line. How will this impact the company?
Yeah, as I said, the LinkGut service and the companion diagnostic is part of our competitive advantage, but the core of the company are the modulators. Mm-hmm. So obviously getting our first product to market is fundamental for the success of the entire company going forward. And that becomes a blueprint for expansion at the site as well, as we go from 10 tons eventually all the way up to 1,000 tons potentially in 10 years, as well as a blueprint for expansion off-site, focusing on food and beverage access production, both in continental Europe and North America, and taking all those learnings as well. As well, the site is an R&D facility to explore different substrates, and we know with geopolitical headwinds and the reality we're facing today that we need to find local substrates and supply locally as well. This is just a fact of reality today. So it is the most important thing. It is the company fundamentally, and it leads into all these opportunities going forward as well.
Well, thanks so much for answering the questions, and we do wish you all the best with your continued work.
Thank you so much.